Welcome, everybody, to our annual town budget meeting. I'm Steve Shanker, City Manager. One of my responsibilities as City Manager is to prepare and present to the Ames City Council the budget for the City of Ames. And this is an important meeting for us because it represents the kickoff, at least the public kickoff, to the budget preparation process. Now, the staff has been working a couple of weeks now on preliminary information, but really this kicks it off, our effort to develop the budget. And one thing we found is very important is before we present the budget, develop the budget, we want to make sure we get as much public input as possible. I don't want to present a budget after working on it for 4 months and find out that we really missed the mark in terms of what citizens would like to see in the budget. Because remember, it's a financial document, but it really represents the array of services that are provided by the city government to all of you as citizens. So this is an important night for us. We want to do two things today. I'm going to start off with some information from Dwayne Pitcher, our finance director. We'll give you a little background on the budget itself at the 20,000 foot level. Gives you good perspective as we begin talking about the budget. More importantly, I want to open it up to all of you here. If you came, I'm sure you want to give some information to me, and I can assure you I'm going to pass it on to the mayor and council before they make their final decisions on the budget. So we're going to give you opportunity to offer some suggestions about the budget. When I talk about the budget, I'm talking about the operating budget, which is the levels of service we provide to the citizens, but also the capital improvements plan, some of the big bricks and mortar projects we prepare and deliver to you all. So we want to get your feedback, if we could, on those type of projects, okay? I want to start out by introducing who's here today, if I could. We have Mayor John Hala's here. Susan Guiazza is our Public Information Officer. I thought Deb was dead.
She just left.
Deb Shildroff was here, but she just left. She'll be in Assistant City Manager. Brian Phillips, Assistant City Manager. Dwayne Pitcher, our Finance Director, and Nancy Masteller, our Budget Coordinator. Okay. By the way, Anita Rollins just came in. She's just been elected to City Council. She will take office on January, so she'll be here listening for her first budget too. Okay, it'll be very important to us. I do want to go over the budget calendar with you. Let's see if we can see this up here, because I want to emphasize there's plenty of time to give input into the budget. We're just beginning this. It's important we get feedback. So the way we get feedback is a number of ways. First of all, we have a statistically valid, easy for me to say, a citizen survey that's sent out each year. And we get feedback on the different levels of service we're providing. Maybe many of you participated in this process. In April, Susan actually presented, in October, when would you do it, Susan? I forgot. Yeah. In October, Susan presented the results of that to the City Council. A lot of good information on what citizens expect in terms of all the services that are provided by the various departments. As I said, in September, departments start preliminary information and gathering information for the CIP, the Capital Improvements Plan, the 5-year Capital Improvements Plan. We kick off in November. We're here tonight for the town budget meeting, receive input, the initial input from citizens on the budget. And then you'll see that in November and December, we start having our internal budget review. I have a budget review team made up of many of the individuals here who review the requests from the city departments as they develop their CIP, their capital improvements plan, and their operating budget. Now, a very important meeting will be December 14th. The City Council, not only do I want citizen input before I start working on the budget, but the City Council might want to give us some guidelines too. They may want some specific projects or guidelines given to us before I start the process. Again, it's very frustrating if we work 4 months, we come out in February with a recommendation, we find out we're not in concert with what the council's thinking. So we try to get some preliminary guidelines up front from the council. And then in January, I hold all my own hearings with department heads and their requests to see what service levels they hope to offer to the citizens. And then an important meeting is on, and you'll see in January 18th, I will present my recommended 5-year capital improvements plan to the public. That'll be out to all of you on the internet. You'll be able to review it. And then at the next meeting on January 27th, we devote time for the citizens to react to it. There may be projects in there that I left out, believe it or not, that you'd like to see in there. So the council likes to hear your input on that. Very important dates for you then will be this year, January 28th, February 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and the 8th. Those are our budget hearings. They're open to the public here. You can view it on Channel 12. You can stream us. You can watch us as the city's staff and the departments come forward with the recommended budget, talk about our service levels and what we're going to try to accomplish in fiscal year 22-23, believe it or not, which starts July 1st of 2022. So it seems like it's a long way away, but it's really not. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So those will be open. There'll be plenty of time as you can react to those recommendations to give feedback to the mayor and council. Their final decisions then will be made on February 8th. That's a key date. They're going to make some final decisions after hearing input from the staff, from all the public input we received from this date forward. Okay. And then we have one final state mandated hearing that usually the council votes on actually adopting the decisions they've made on February 8th. Okay. Any questions about the schedule? Okay, now today we'll start off with Dwayne, but I want to emphasize tonight it's live. There's opportunities for you to give feedback if you're not here today. So we'll have a call-in number you'll see up on television. People can call in with their comments, and we'll record them for the city council. People can also go to post their comments or questions on Facebook, the City of Ames Facebook page, and also the Ames Channel 12 YouTube. There's opportunities for you to post questions or comments there. I'm going to say this a number of times throughout the meeting. If you're not here tonight, you couldn't make it, it's okay. If you don't want to speak or you want to add more things later on, it's okay. All you have to do is we'll put up my email address. Email me your comments about the budget. I will promise you this, and we'll make sure that all your comments are transcribed and sent to the mayor and council before they make the final decisions. Okay, so that input means a lot to them. I cannot guarantee you that every one of your ideas will be adopted, but I can guarantee you it will go to them and they will give it serious consideration. Okay, why don't we start with Dwayne? Give us a little background on the budget if you could.
All right, thanks, Steve. As Steve mentioned tonight, the primary focus is to get input from the public on information they'd like to see in the budget, but to provide a basis for that, we'd like to give just a little bit of background on where we are in the current budget, so for fiscal year 21-22. Anyone that gets a property tax bill, they know that it's consolidated for all the different taxing entities here in the city of Ames, and depending on which school district you're in, the city portion of the bill can vary from about a little less than 32% if you're in the Ames district. If you're in the Gilbert district, but also in the city of Ames, that percentage would be a little bit lower because the biggest part of the bill, the school funding, is a little bit higher for those that are in the Gilbert district. So that's our portion of the property tax bill for the city, a little less than a third. So when we look at, very big pictures, how do we come up with the budget and how is it paid for? There's a couple different factors. One is, as far as the property tax funded services, is what basket of services do you want and what does that cost? And then how is that divided up? Well, it's allocated across to the property owners in the city based on valuation of the property. So two things that impact that equation are how much you pay or how much the valuation change and how much the cost of those services change. So one thing that we really look at to look at the impact of the bill is what are the percentage change in our taxable valuation from year to year. And as you can see from this chart, it can vary considerably. In the current year we're in right now, it was up 4.7%. So there's a whole lot of factors that go into this. We won't go into that tonight, but just keep in mind that that's a factor that will impact the property tax levy that comes out of the budget. Another impact on the budget is local option sales tax. So that is a sales tax on retail sales. 1% of that goes locally, and 0.6 of that 1% or 60% goes directly for property tax relief. So that has a varied impact on the budget over the years. If you look back, this number in the big green, that is what our total rate, what we actually levied in taxes. These numbers up here is what the rate would have been had we not had local option sales tax. So you can see that impact was shrinking a little bit for a few years, and then a lot of that had to do with online retail sales, or the shift there. There was a Supreme Court decision, the Wayfair furniture retailer versus South Dakota, that resulted in the ability, well, the requirement that those taxes be collected on our behalf. So even if you're not brick and mortar in the state, and that really helped restore that sales tax. Doesn't help the local businesses, but it did help restore that sales tax. So that's where we are. Those are a couple of the things we look at. And just here's the rates where they've been. We actually dropped a little bit this year, and a lot of that was due to that increase in value. So where does that money come from? We talk about property tax quite a bit, but that is not our largest source of revenue. In fact, it's far from it. Our largest source of revenue is charges for services, and that is primarily for the utilities. So water services, wastewater, electricity, stormwater, that's the bulk of these services. So the more you use, the more you pay, and that's the biggest part of our budget. Property taxes over here about 15%. We won't go through all this. Bond proceeds can vary depending on what kind of projects we have funded by bonds. We have internal services, intergovernmental revenue, that's grants, money to SIRIDE and other things such as that. So just get an idea of the total amount of the budget. This is total revenues for 21-22, the year we're in right now, the year that will end June 30th of 22. Fairly large organization. Total revenues, $242 million. But part of that's transfers within the organization. So revenue that comes in from outside the city is about $220 million. There's property taxes. Here's that charges for services, nearly $100 million. And that just gives you an idea of the scale of the budget. So where's the money spent? Not surprisingly, it corresponds pretty closely to where the money comes from. So here's utilities. Again, they charge for those services quite a bit less than the amount of revenue, but they also collect fees that pay for their capital improvement plan. So as Steve mentioned, we have a 5-year plan, and that's what we use to help set rates so that we have fairly level rates and we can fund those capital projects and operations without going to the bond market frequently for utilities. Here's debt service. That's general obligation debt. And these are just the other classifications. Just some of the ones that are pretty property tax dependent would be public safety and community enrichment, which includes the library and parks and recreation. So here's the summary of expenditures. Pretty close to the same. Sometimes this can vary because the capital improvement plan can change. But if we would have looked back a few slides, we had total revenues of about $219 million, and we had expenditures about $220. The reason for that is the capital expenditures. We do go through phases where we're accumulating for projects, and then phases where we're spending down. And that's all part of that larger 5-year plan. So very close to the same number, $220 million in costs. Transfers the same number on the other side. That's just moving money between the different fund types at the city. So here's a look at our property tax levy. In the state of Iowa, limits property tax levy on what they call a general levy, and this is for things not otherwise designated, to $8.10. And you can see for the city of Ames, we're well under that amount at about $5.55. And there's some reductions in the total costs that are funded by the general levy. One was a property tax reduction, which we talked about. There's another reduction that is not just at risk. We know it's going to be reduced over time, and that's a state replacement tax. There was several years ago a bill that passed property tax reform that reduced the tax rate on commercial and industrial property. The state provided replacement tax for those dollars lost, but as happened frequently in the past, eventually that goes away. So we'll need to look at that and how we replace that through taxes over the next few years. Other levies, they have a levy called trust and agency levy. That's where we can levy all the benefits, employee benefits. For the city, we only levy for police and fire pension contributions. Transit levy. Students at Iowa State are the largest contributor, along with federal grants to the transit agency. But the taxpayers here at the city of Ames also make a contribution a little under $2 million. And there's our levy before debt service. And then we also levy taxes separately to repay our bonds. Total, it's down to about $9.88. That generates that $32.4 million. So one area that we always like to emphasize as we go through the budget is how does that impact the different property owners throughout the city. So in this slide, we just look at the residential class. We break it down a lot more during the budget. And we look at an assessed value of $100,000, and there's a state rollback rate applied to that. So it takes the assessed value, it reduces it or rolls it back to a taxable value. Then our tax rate is applied, and then that will generate, or that's a bill of a certain amount of dollars to each of the property tax owners. So we just look at kind of a trend over time, and the number has not changed significantly. It was $560 per 100,000 back in 1819, jumped up to $571 in 1920. I think that was a valuation change year. Then we're back down around $560 and down to $557 in 21, 22. Now, your assessed value, this is fixed at $100,000, could have changed. Generally, they're reassessed up. So your tax bill might go up, even though the rate, had you stayed the same, it would have possibly gone down a little bit. So you have to look at your own property. We break this up in great detail during the budget process. So the other question people may ask, and it's kind of the reason we're here tonight, is where does that money go? So that $100,000 property would generate taxes of $557. And how is it spent? The largest portion is on streets and traffic, and most of that is for debt service. So we have other sources to fund operations for street maintenance and things like that. There's a road use or fuel tax. But much of the capital improvements to fund projects like the extension of Grand Avenue, a lot of the major improvements is done through bonds, and those are repaid through property taxes. The largest group together is the community protection group. So police protection, fire protection. Out of every $100,000 in value, you're spending $134 on police and $88 on fire. Then there's the library. The library also includes the debt service for the renewal of the library that was done a few years ago. Parks and recreation. We do charge for a lot of our recreation programs. It doesn't pay 100% of the cost of the facilities, but it pays most, if not all, of the operating costs. But we do operate all the parks, and of course, those no fee to use those parks. So that funding to maintain and keep those up is through the property taxes. There's general support services, and then as you move down, the numbers start getting fairly small here. One I will point out is the resource recovery plant. Most of our utilities, or even for this one, the bulk of the funding is through user fees, and that's the same case for the resource recovery plant. The tipping fees and the sale of the refuse-derived fuel to the electric plant is the bulk of the revenue. But each of the cities that are participants in that resource recovery system do pay per capita to help fund that. And for us, that comes out to $6 per 100,000 in value. So you may ask, where does the city of Ames compare to other cities in Iowa as far as property tax? So if I just look over at this column right here, there's some pretty dramatic differences in the property tax levy from cities across the state, but there's also a fair amount of difference in the values in some of these cities, or the values of property. So here's Ames at $9.87. So we are this year the lowest. Dubuque's just a little bit above us at $9.89, and neighbors just to the south, Ankeny at $9.95, and you can see some of these. They vary clear up to Waterloo at $18.63. I mentioned that general levy, which is capped at $8.10. Most cities just go in and levy the $8.10 and figure out what kind of services they can fund with that. We take a much different look at that. We look at what services that we want to fund, and then we have some flexibility, obviously not being at that limit, that we can, if the council so chooses, they could add some services, and we've added firefighters and other things over the years, and we can fund it within that levy. The problem, if you're at the limit, when times get difficult, if you think down back to 2008-9, when we actually had values drop, you can't increase that levy no matter what. So if there were cities that ended up turning out streetlights during that time, and we did not have to do that. So that's kind of how we compare to other cities in Iowa. And that's all we have on the current budget. We can certainly answer other questions on that, or you can ask in a different forum, but now we'll turn it over for public input.
Anybody have any questions on the budget itself? Yes, sir. Wait, I'll have, if you don't mind, we'll make it real easy. The mayor's going to come to you with the microphone. You won't even have to move. We'll keep it informal, okay? Let's have a chat.
I'll have some other comment here.
Sure.
A little bit, but on the budget itself, is there any thought toward increasing that rate from the 555, 560?
Well, we don't just increase the rate. We decide on services, and then whatever those costs, that's going to impact the rate.
Right. That's a good point. Two things about the budget. So you might go, I'm going to sit down, we're going to keep this informal, if that's okay. You might go home and you'll see that, or you'll watch on TV on Channel 12 that the city council talks about they're going to lower your property taxes. And we've done that in years, not only the rate, but the actual property taxes. You go home and you get your bill of property taxes, and the property taxes go up. I just want to keep emphasizing that property tax bill you receive, the city of Ames government represents about 1/3 of your tax rate. So it's possible that there's two other taxing entities, the Story County tax rate and also the school district tax rate. And in some cases, we could lower it, the school district could raise it, vice versa. So you might say, well, they're not telling us the truth because my tax bill didn't go down as the school district said. And that could be because we raised it that time. Also, when you get your assessed value, I know you think your assessed value is going up 20%, so my property taxes are going to go up 20%. That's not necessarily true either. As Dwayne says, we look at what we need to provide the money we need to provide the services that are directed by the city council. So if your assessed value goes up, we only have to collect a certain amount of money. We lower the tax rate to offset that. So you'll see that. People got really concerned 3 years ago, I think, when all of our properties were assessed extremely increased. Your taxes didn't go up the same percentage as your assessed value because the council lowered the rate just to collect the amount of money they need to provide the police service, the fire service, parks and recreation that they need it. Okay? Any other questions on the budget before we open it up? Yes, sir.
Hello. I was wondering, so you said that there's the streets, there's I think $150 out of that was for the streets.
Yep.
Is that for like the capital improvement plan of the streets? And then also, you mentioned that for the maintenance of the streets, there was like a different source.
Yep.
What is that source? And does the maintenance include like the eventual replacement or just the maintenance?
Yeah, streets is kind of complex. We finance a lot of the street maintenance and snow removal, things like that, through revenue we get from the state. Your gas tax, all of us pay tax on our gas. That tax is remitted through the state back to the cities on a per capita basis. So that helps us pay a majority of the public works department as we do street maintenance, fill potholes, and remove snow, sweep the streets. So that helps. But some of the major street improvement projects, if we totally reconstruct a street, or we build a new one like Grand Avenue, been on Grand Avenue Extension, we have to actually borrow money. We actually sell general obligation bonds. We incur debt to pay for the project up front. So your property taxes go to pay for the reconstruction or addition of new facilities. So it's complex. And we also try to leverage as much state and federal grant money as we can too. That helps do that. So it's a combination as far as public works and streets. Good question. Anything else in that before we open it up? Okay, let's flash it up if we could again. People could call in. We have the call-in number. go to our website, our Ames Channel 12, right? And we'll also flash up my email address that you could send emails to after tonight. We will compile everything that's said and we'll make sure the council gets it. Okay, now I love to do this because I'm going to have my assistant over here, Brian's going to have two columns. You've been here before, right? I love to do this because we get a citizen satisfaction survey, and not unlike a lot of citizens throughout the country, people are concerned about property taxes going up or our utility bills going up. So as you come forward, we really appreciate all the areas you want us to do more of. It's always helpful to the city council if there's some areas you'd like to see less of, so we can offset that increase, right? It's always easy to keep adding, but there's a point where people get kind of upset with us when our rates go up too much or our property taxes. So we'll also ask you if you have any ideas for reducing expenditures too, okay? So we're going to ask questions on service levels, where you would like to see money spent, capital improvement items or projects. The floor is yours. All we ask, the mayor will come over. If you could just give your name and address for the record, council will know who's talking, and we'll transcribe not everything you say verbatim, but what's your message you want to send to the council. You can also ask questions too if you like. So who wants to open it up? If you're here, I expect everybody at least talk once, and then we'll go around for the second time if you have other ideas. Anybody want to give some input? Stan, yes, sir.
Hi, Stan Raby, 219 Wildflower. First of all, I would like to give kudos to the city council for adding a kind of capital grant for the arts. I'll tell you, that is, for the arts in Ames, a huge step forward, because that allows the arts organizations to invest in things that otherwise we have to save for years and years and years to get, or we'd have to borrow money to get, or we'd have to fundraise to get. So that is a game changer for us. So the CODA grant for capital improvements, I want to thank the city council for doing that.
Yeah, appreciate that.
He stole my message. Jenny Brockpoller, 3817 West Lawn Drive, and I came here this evening to say the same thing. Thank you so much to the City Council for the support they've shown to the arts in the last 2 years, and keep it up. I wish I had something I wanted to spend less on, but I don't. But I do appreciate the investment you've made in the arts in the recent past, and I hope that can continue.
Hello, Hector Arbuckle, 519 Oliver Circle. I have, as someone who walks a lot around Ames and who talks to a lot of people who walk around Ames, I've seen that the sidewalks are oftentimes very jagged and jumbled, and like oftentimes in the wintertime, they're not cleaned well. I would love to see the city take over the maintenance of the sidewalks, to maintain them to a high standard, and to like clear them during the winter time. And I recognize that is like a very costly thing. So I would also like to see the city, personally, I'd like to see the city spend less on the expansion and reconstruction of streets. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of streets in Ames that are like very wide, multiple, like 4 lanes, etc. And I think that for the city, it would be safer and hopefully cheaper to reconstruct them when they need to be reconstructed as much narrower streets with many fewer lanes. And then hopefully we could spend that money on the sidewalk maintenance. That's just an idea that I have. I don't know exactly how it works.
That's okay. Appreciate your comment.
Oh, well, not to sound like a broken record, but back on the arts, as Stan said, that really is a game changer, and we just love the amount that was able to be put out by the city council for that. And I should have introduced myself. I'm Mike Salzberger, 905 Douglas Avenue. And along that same thing, I'm wondering if that's the sort of thing that we could, I know that was a one-off, I'm wondering if that's the sort of thing that we could put in there as that we could count on every year, because it is Story Theater Company is the organization I'm involved with most, and we're planning out, just like the city, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years on our capital budget. And so to put something like that out and say, hey, you've got a couple of months to come up with a capital project and it's got to be done in the year, we're certainly not going to not put in, for something there, but it would make a huge difference if we knew that that was something we could count on every year from the city. And then the other thing that I've talked about several times is there any way that we could get an arts coordinator that's a city employee? And as far as the spend less side of this, I know that that's spending more, but in fact, as we've talked about before, I actually think that once that person got up and running, there's certain grants and things that we're not applying for as a city, that I think if you had someone who was specifically going for things like that, I think that they certainly could cover some of their cost, if not all of their cost, for somebody like that. And then that's basically it. But a huge thank you on that extra that was able to be put toward the arts organizations for this year.
I know what you're asking for, but just as a side, if you know of any grants that we're not taking advantage of, maybe you can contact me. We have a staff that's very talented. We can apply for those grants. So we need to talk, okay? If we're missing opportunities out there, because I don't want that to happen right now, regardless of the position or not. So.
And again, arts in general, I know it's a tough thing to say, let's spend money on the arts. And, it does take, as we've talked about, especially over the last couple of years, we haven't really seen the results of any of this increased spending we've been doing on the arts. Because of COVID and things like that, we were all shut down. But I think that spending on the arts really is the sort of thing that you're not going to see a difference this year, next year. It is 3 years, 5 years, 7 years from now that some of that, we've talked about Dan Colhane has put the number out before, that there's 22 or 23,000 people a year, every day, that are commuting into Ames that aren't actually living here. And it would start, being people that would actually live here instead of just commuting in. And so, we get a little bit more money in on the property tax side. So I know it's not a spend less, but we would get more in on the income side.
Yeah. It's certainly a quality of life factor, no matter what, right? That attracts people to a town.
So I'm Julia Feddersen. I live at 1715 Clark Avenue. And I'll just kind of jump off mic with a way that arts funding in Ames is already making an impact at Story Theater Company, and with our presence in the community. So we produce 4 shows a year, and it's all children actors and it's family-oriented theater, as well as a touring show that we take to after-school programs and usually the library, which is always fun. Something that we were able to start doing this year, we started it in June, and then we just also closed our first fall show, which was Frozen, at the auditorium. We started being able to do radical hospitality pricing, which means that anybody can come. Which actually we saw a really big increase in people who were able to come see our shows for a price that they could pay, even if it wasn't like previously what we had set as a ticket price. So we actually had over 2,000 people come to see Frozen Junior at the auditorium. We had 50 local kids in it. It was a lot of fun. So thank you for helping make things like that possible, because it is already starting to make a difference for us.
Great. Thank you.
I was a volunteer doorman for 10 or 15 years here at City Hall, and I got a no trespassing order that I can't be here unless it's for official business. But some of the things I was doing as a volunteer doorman, I kind of think you guys should be doing yourselves. It's like one time I was so hurt by what I wanted the motto of Ames to be name Ames Home. And you decided to make it smart choice. And to the city council meeting where that was decided, you told me you got 7,000 comments. You didn't want to hear any more. You didn't even put it in the newsletter for that you mailed out the utility companies, except to say that you had done it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went to a bunch of lawyers and asked them if they could represent me to sue you guys, and I was told that it was like you guys would just get really upset with me about being a doorman.
Right.
And
So what would you like to see in the way of the budget? We're here, the point of today is talk about the budget,
Well,
service levels.
I mean, it's like I was offering to take people out to lunch and giving total strangers $10, and they called the police on me.
Right. But
You
is there some
know,
suggestion you have for the city council on the budget or capital improvements plan for next year, Richard? Any suggestions?
Well, I think Ames should be called home.
Okay, so a slogan, right? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Please, if you haven't spoken yet, I need you to speak or eat cookies, either one of them. I don't know what
Hi, I'm Judy Stumbo, 225 South Kellogg. I'm with the Bridge Home here in Ames, and I'm trying to get this all figured out in my head. It's very complex, so bless you guys for figuring out how all this works. But so funding for the human service organizations in the budget is coming within the community enrichment.
Community betterment, correct?
Okay. And then,
40%.
and then is that 20%, is that what is allocated then through asset?
There's no specific percentage, if that's what you're asking for.
No, I'm just saying, is that where the funding
Approximately?
is coming from? It's just from that asset funding.
Let's do it one more time.
Okay.
Out of the local option tax, 40% goes to community betterment. Is that what you're saying? And we allocate asset, and the arts comes out of that 40%.
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
That is.
All right.
And then the second part of that question is that the only revenue stream or area where funding is dispersed to help the human service agencies through the
Yes.
city?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the source of funding, correct?
Okay. So what I would like to suggest is we need to invest in our human service organizations. We really need to invest in the people in our community who are living in poverty. In the first 3 months of this fiscal year, we've served over 966 people. And we're going to have a big problem if we don't start investing in some infrastructure where we can really help the people who are struggling in our community and their families. 34% of the people we work with are children under the age of 18. So I cannot stress enough. We really need to look at that, invest in it. One thing that I found interesting with Iowa City, they have a similar program like Asset. I think theirs is called Neighborhood Development something services. But they also have a specific fund just for affordable housing. And that's a $1 million-ish fund that they utilize to get affordable housing into Iowa City so we can help some of the folks that we are seeing. So that's another area I would really like the city to consider investing in, is that affordable housing. We really need to fill that gap. And then along with that goes the supportive housing services.
Right. Well, I misspoke. I should add, for affordable housing, we have other sources of revenue now. That's not just, I thought you meant allocated specifically to human service agencies, but we have CDBG funds and home funds, as you know, that could be allocated for affordable housing. So I didn't want to leave you with the impression that only local option tax is the only source.
Correct. Yeah, and you're correct on that. But historically, what the city has done with those funds and what their plan is to do with those funds is to invest in single family homes.
Right. Well,
And that's not what my people need. We need multifamily, affordable rental units.
right. Well, actually, as you know, the city council is working on a subdivision that's going to have low-income apartments.
Right. 30 some. We need a lot more than that.
I'm not sure I don't know how many there are exactly.
Yeah.
Loris Olson, President of Home Allies, a new agency focused on creating housing opportunities for the very, very low income and also people disadvantaged by life experiences. And I'd like to echo and once again support what Jody says about needs. And I'd like to be a little more forceful, okay, in saying that in the basic levy, we need to bring it up a couple more and out of general property taxes. I will be bringing before the council here, now it looks like by the end of the year, a request for some money out of the general funds because the project I'd be asking for support with does not qualify for asset funds because we're not an asset agency, and it does not qualify for home or per my understanding. Okay.
Really? Won't qualify for CDBG or home?
Nope. Vanessa said no. She was very articulate about it at a recent council meeting. And actually where I'm down to is if you can tell the council if it comes out of general funds. And so what Jody's addressing, I'm looking at one project, I'm learning an awful lot, plus the many years I went to the Affordable Housing Coalition before it rolled into Two Rivers. And there are barriers out there for getting people into apartments, even that are already built, because of their bad credit or their past histories. And one thing that was brought up at one point in time that I'd like to see us all who are interested in that housing for the really people who are severely housing burdened and housing burdened cost of housing is that some landlords don't want to take people because it can cost an average of $10,000 per tenant if they have to evict someone or with damages to an apartment, or if somebody moves out next door because of a disruptive tenant. And that was a real eye-opener to me to talk to two of the large landlords here in town and hear that. So maybe one cost, it's a spend more, because I'm not advocating it come out of asset funds already, but is there be some kind of bank that would be like a guarantee for landlords of a deposit plus bank? And Iowa law restricts deposits to 2 months. So it's not like even advocates like Jody's or Lori from Good Neighbor, since she's here. Okay, it's not even like their advocates can go in and try and negotiate for a bigger deposit. Okay, so there's money needed out there, and the local option sales tax money, and then the money is also like home, etc. They're not providing what we really need, which is a variety of sources. And the only way I can really see to do that, and for the council to do it in 22, 23 budget, is to take a look at taking a little bit, just a small 2 or 3 tenths of a tick even.
Well, how
out
much,
there.
give me an idea of the money you're requesting in the council.
Oh, I'm going to be coming for $46,200. Yeah.
That's very specific.
Huh?
You got to figure it out. It's very specific, huh?
I'm pretty far along. I'm just.
Is that a one-time request?
Yeah, it's a one-time request. It's a one-time request due to the fact and part of it's because I'm not an asset agency and what's needed to build this. Yeah. So it's a very specific, but
Okay,
we've
well,
got to start to free it up for other, it's just not Home Allies, but for other projects that don't fit into a very narrow mold of either asset, which needs more money, or that the home or CDBG funds that don't fit
Right.
into what the council designed or the federal requirements.
So I'm not sure that's right, Brian. It's not just a bank to support deposits. You're not saying that, are you? Or what are you saying?
I'm saying that's one project that could come out of but in general, what I'm saying is there needs to be some money that's local money that doesn't come with all the bells and whistles and restrictions of federal money,
Yeah.
which is home and CDB, or even some of the requirements that are attached to asset, because asset doesn't fund it. All agencies.
Right.
So you're locking out your innovative, you're locking out your new programs. Sometimes.
So is it low and moderate income? Is there a certain level you're thinking about on this?
30%. There'll be a few that'll be at 50% LMI.
Gotcha.
We're talking about really cost burden and severely burdened. As I'm going to quote a council member who just got reelected, Amber Corriere. Amber Corriere is often fond of saying, at least to some people, we've got people in this community that are never ever going to buy a house.
Right.
And we need to start recognizing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we've had anybody call in, or I know they're out there. I know you're out there watching. You've got to call in.
Hi, I'm Lori Allen. Let me see, 613 Clark Avenue, good neighbor. And I'll just kind of pile on with all of the other kind of housing advocates. And first of all, I do want to say thank you for, helping support us financially through the asset process. But we're a small agency. We've been around for about 24 years. And in the last 2 years, the amount of assistance that we've offered for homelessness prevention has risen by 102%. And we see in our small agency where I'm a full-time employee and we have 2 work-study students part-time from ISU, we see about 50 households a month who come and ask us for help to prevent homelessness. They might have a utility disconnect or a 3-day notice from their landlord, or, they are behind 2 or 3 months. And again, Vanessa is very helpful, in kind of helping us figure out where we might send people or where we might find some funds. But I would just encourage you to look at increasing how you are funding asset so that we can, again, the expense of someone, both for the landlord and for the tenants, the expense is just, horrendous to have someone evicted, and for them to start over again with a deposit, and often they lose a lot of their household items. The other thing that I would include and spend more on is I would love to see our public transportation free, that no one would have to pay to ride SciRide. I think that, we give out 20 tickets of, reduced fare tickets at a time, and it just feels so paltry. And, people walk across this community to go to food pantries, to, come to our place to get the bus tickets. And of course, we're not a 24/7 agency. So I think the free public transit would really enhance this community, and not just for people who can't afford the tickets. I think there's a lot of people who might consider riding it if they didn't have to buy a $30 pass or have a dollar bill, every time to get on the bus. So anyway, I would just love to see homelessness prevention supported more, as well as that transportation project. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Anybody else who hasn't spoken, raise your hand. Let me pick on you. Come on. What are you thinking about the budget? We'll let you speak there.
I'm Ben Wilber, 304 Welch. Going along with what Hector said about some of the things you could spend less on. I think less expansion of streets would be helpful. I think, especially I live in Campus Town. I think some traffic calming measures would be helpful, just to make it a safer place for pedestrians to walk, but also to reduce vehicle noise, just because I don't think you'd be having as much acceleration after stop signs or street lights. I think it'd just be helpful for the whole community, like adding speed bumps, or more like gradual speed bumps, like traffic tables, I think they're called. I think would be helpful, and I've seen other communities utilize those well.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else hasn't spoken? I gotcha. You're prepared for class today, aren't you? I'm going to call on you. You're not.
Oh, I'm always prepared to talk. Just ask anyone who knows me.
Yeah.
My name's Lindamundan. I live at 209 East 6th Street. And full disclosure, I also work at the Bridge Home. And I worked for Access for 8 years, so I've been in the human services field quite a while. But I also walk a lot around town, and I often almost get run over. So pedestrian safety is at the top of my agenda too. Lincoln Way and Duff Avenues are horrible, and about once a week I almost get run over at the intersection. So it'd be great if we could do something about pedestrian safety before.
Lincoln Way and Duff, did you say?
Lincoln Way and Duff, those intersections are awful, and I do look both ways and haul across the street. So yeah, before I'm a statistic. But one of the things that I do as part of my job, even though I'm in leadership at the Bridge Home, is I work on street outreach. and I go with law enforcement, and we go on street outreach, which is for we're seeking people who are experiencing homelessness, and I go with a couple of officers when they're able under bridges and out in the parks, and we will sometimes hike for a mile or more, and it doesn't matter if it's snowy or if there's barbed wire or if there are branches or the tree trunks that are down that we have to crawl over. We'll go back and doesn't matter what time of day or night it is, and we'll find tents, or we'll find lean-tos or whatever it is, and we know that there are families back there and they're camping out. And we know that there are people living in their cars in the parking lots. And we know that there are so many more people who are experiencing homelessness than than any of us know. And we know that there are so many more people who are working poor, who can't afford housing in this community. When you're looking at the number of apartments, unfortunately, I'm not in one of them. I have very good affordable housing, but there are apartments in this community that are renting for $500 a bedroom. And they're just not affordable to our families who are living under 30% of the AMI. So it's a very serious problem. Our shelter cannot absorb the number of people, and they shouldn't have to. Our families in this community need to be able to get into safe, affordable, and permanent housing. And I'll toot my own horn a little bit. I think I'm a pretty darn good grant writer. Last year I wrote over $1 million in grants, and I usually get the big ones. But one thing is true is these federal grants, like the HUD grants for ESG, they come with a 75% match, a lot of them. So for example, rapid rehousing, which is a 6-month rent and utility supplemental grant, comes with 6 months of case management with it. For every dollar that I can get, I have to come up with 75% local match. So that match has to come from somewhere.
Right.
So it needs to come from our communities here. And I just wrote one for a permanent supportive housing grant that comes with a 25% match. So this is where our community has to come in, and our local donors, our private donors, like Mike and Lori and Susan over here, they can only come out of their own pockets so much. So we really depend on our community. And so I guess that's what I can help with, other than I know that our winter crews are going to be out there busy this winter, scraping our streets. And I lived in Wisconsin for 16 years, and I don't know if they got better scrapers underneath their snow plows or what's going on, but I never had the problem on the city streets as I do here. And I know it's not the people out there doing the snow plowing, because they're out there all the time, but they just can't seem to get the snow off the street. So bless them and help them out if you can get some better equipment for
Well,
them.
interesting fact about snow removal, if you ever seen the plows, they have rubber on the bottom of it. Our goal is never, I just want to tell you, our goal is never to get it down to concrete. You know that? It's just to move it so we can get around. And we could put a lot more salt. I can melt that snow for you, but you're not going to like the environmental effects of it. So we use mostly sand with a little salt. So we get more effective in snow removal and ice removal. It will have a very detrimental impact on the environment. So we've tried to balance that. So yeah. So it's frustrating for all of us, but our crews are out there all the time and they do a good job. We're going to get you so the most of the snow's moved off the street and you can move around, but you're not going to go 60 miles an hour. You're going to be very careful when you go. And but we'll never get down the concrete. We could get it down the concrete, but I don't think you like the impact of it. Yeah. Good question, though. Okay. Is that working, Mayor? Would you turn it on me? Because I think I lost you. The battery go? It sounded like you lost it. Anybody else? Everybody spoke? Well, second time? Third time? Go.
It's working. It's green. It's connected, so it's on.
You guys' name again? You guys' name?
And I think it would be really valuable for the city to prioritize pedestrians over like cars, etc. For the for transportation funding, like primarily support pedestrians and like transit, and then the cars can come second.
Okay, I understand. Anybody else? All right, I want to call your attention to some key dates. Oh,
Completely unrelated to arts. Have we ever looked at syncing the stoplights going down Duff and Grand?
if you look at I'll tell you something amazing. We've been thinking about it for many years. And in our CIP, you can pull it up, because everybody asks us that. And it's an interesting phenomenon. How do we balance it? As we coordinate traffic moving up Grand Avenue, people want to continually go and not stop at a stoplight. Unfortunately, there are people who cross Grand Avenue, and they called me up and said, I had to stay 20 minutes. I was waiting for that light on Grand Avenue to turn green. So if we had everybody going up the corridor or down Duff and no one going across, I can make it work for you. But technology has approved itself. If you look at our CIP, we're going to spend, oh my gosh, about $8 million over probably 7 or 8 years. With technology now, they're actually going to have at the intersections computers that will read real-time traffic movements. What that will be is if there's nobody at the cross traffic, we can keep moving people fast, And as there's only a few people that cross traffic, you don't have to have the full light, right away there. So it'll be real live, online, real life reaction to what the traffic patterns are. That should speed it up. And we will synchronize those major corridors. Technology has changed a lot. It's very expensive, but it's going to be kind of fantastic when we get it done. And we're starting to put the baseline in, all connected with fiber optics and real-time reaction to traffic. And that changes, right? Changes by the weather, by the time of day, by a football game weekend or whatever. So we're thinking about that. That's in there. And you should see some improvements. Will it be perfect? You're always going to have to stop and get frustrated because someone else is going the other direction. But we'll get better at it. I promise you, we'll get better at it. We've got a great traffic engineer, Damian Preditzer, who understands all this stuff, and we'll make it work. Good questions. Yeah, another comment?
I saw that the traffic light thing in the capital improvements plan.
Yep.
And while I appreciate that it would make it more convenient for people who are like driving around town, I don't think that should be a priority for the city's funding.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. As we have people who are homeless, as we have sidewalks that are crumbling, I think that the making it somewhat more convenient for people to drive around is not like the highest priority.
But this is why it's so hard and difficult to be a council member. Because you're trying to balance what people want. Talk about multimodal. So some people, they want bikes to have the preference. Some people want pedestrians. Some people still want cars. And council is trying as well as possible to meet the demands and needs or desires of all these people. And sometimes they come in conflict. Some people want more, some people want less. Some people want their property taxes to go down. Some people are willing to pay more for it. It always depends if you like what we're paying for, right? You can pay more if you give this, but I don't want you to pay more if you give to that person. It's a really difficult job being a council person. Anita, welcome. You'll know that, right? Luckily, she's already been through this in the school board, so she knows exactly what she's getting into. But you're right. But this shows the conflict and the challenge before city councils. It's very, very difficult. They try to balance those things, and it's not perfect. You can't keep everybody happy, but they'll keep working at it. I promise you they will. Stan? Yes, sir.
Just one last thing is, I'm part of a, thank you. I'm part of a group of people that lived in Ames, moved away, and made it a point to move back.
I know.
And my circle of friends and a lot of the people that I know have all moved back because Ames has an amazing quality of life. And I think the city council has done and the city staff and everybody involved have made Ames a fabulous place to live. And I just think it's a credit to the town, to the people who live here, and the energy that happens in this town that people choose to retire or come back to Ames.
I appreciate that. And that's where we get fulfillment, our greatest fulfillment, I think. We talk to people who moved away, and I don't care if we build all the things you could possibly build, when people come to me and say, you know, the greatest life I ever had was in Ames, Iowa. And we're not perfect. And you'll tell me about all the traffic requirements and all, we're not giving enough money here. But then people move away to other cities and they say, well, Ames was pretty good, you know? So if you put in perspective, we've got a lot more to do. We really do. But it's a great place to live. And that's why many of us chose to spend the rest of our lives here. So I think we'll dedicate ourselves to keep doing that, you know, and we won't be perfect and we'll fall short of the mark for you in many cases, but we'll try to meet all the needs of the people as much as possible. I appreciate the comment.
So I'm usually not known like to play devil's advocate or that sort of thing. But I think, you know, working where I work and seeing the population I do, I think it's also important to remember that experience of, you know, freedom and access to social and cultural things is not universal here in Ames. And I think tonight is very telling that when you look around this room that, you know, I guess I can't estimate what everyone's socioeconomic, you know, ranking is, but I think we're all probably pretty high, and that we're certainly not very diverse in terms of racial or ethnic background. And so I would, you know, really encourage you to think about who's present and who's in the conversations, and not, you know, be too satisfied with how things are working, you know, for the status quo, but always make it a point to try to bring in who isn't here and who may not have the same experience as most of us.
Right, and the council's actually put it as one of their goals to, over the year, to increase their efforts to have dialogue and input from the marginalized community in Ames. Because many times as city council members, we see the same people all the time. And we're not getting out there into those neighborhoods and talking to people to see what their needs and desires are. And the council's committed to doing that. We're going to try to find ways to do that better, I think. So I think they want to do that. Like I said, we're not perfect.
Right.
I'm not saying everything's great.
Right.
Don't get me wrong.
Right. I understand
We're
that.
trying to
I
do
just
better.
think that sometimes we kind of get carried away
Nope.
and forget who's not having the conversation.
I
with
think the
us.
council's well aware of that and wants to do a better job.
Thanks.
That was awesome, Lori. Thank you. And I love the city's effort to reach out to the marginalized populations, because I think that's very important. I also know that our population will not talk to the city
Yeah,
council,
that's the problem.
and that's why we're here. We are their voice,
Yep.
and that's the only way their voice is going to be heard. So I hope as we continue to move forward that the city and the council can really listen to our human service agencies and believe what we are seeing and telling you is the truth. And we do need to invest in those folks. So appreciate that opportunity
No, that's a
to
good
do
point.
that.
I hear what you're saying. Some key dates I want you to mark down, everybody who's watching on TV too. Remember, January 18th, we will unveil the capital improvements plan. The staff will be here and explain page by page, project by project, the projects that are in that 5-year capital improvements plan. The following week, we'll ask for input from the public after you review it. And by the way, that document, Susan always makes sure that document will have hard copies in the library here, or we put it online for people who have access to our website. So you'll see that document in advance of that meeting. The other dates that are very, very important then are the February meetings. Remember the budget hearings themselves, the operating budget hearings? So once you remember about January 28th, that's a great meeting. It's during a Friday afternoon, but these are all televised and be taped. We'll make sure you can see it on Channel 12, and you can video stream it too, and also play back. There's an overview of the budget recommendation on January 28th, and then the individual budget hearings are February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at night. You could come here, you can watch it on TV again. And then February 8th is a crucial night because that's where the council makes their final decisions, okay, what they're going to take to public hearing. And that final public hearing is on March 8th. That finalizes the budget that will begin July 1st. 2022 and then run through June 30th. Can you believe it? I can't believe it's going to be 2023. So we've got a lot of work to do, but you're at the beginning of the process. So if you told us what you want to tell us today, that's fine. If you have any follow-up items or people at home couldn't make it, all you'll have to do is email me at steve.shanker@cityofames.org. I bet you they put that up there. Oop. Look at that. That's it. Pause there so everybody can look at it. Send it to me. We're going to compile it. Nancy compiles all the feedback, and we give it to the city council. And we'll give it to them as soon as possible, probably before their December meeting, too, as they give us guidelines. Here's an example. Tam Lorenz, I don't know if you know Tam. She already sent an email to me. She couldn't make it tonight, but I've got it here. She wants to allocate more money to replace 4-inch mains, water mains, in some of the older neighborhoods, and also wants to increase the priority of tree planting by allocating more money for tree planting and its positive effect on the environment. So those are the kind of thoughts we get in writing, and that will be transmitted to the city council too, okay? Plenty of time to get involved. Again, I cannot guarantee you every one of your thoughts will be incorporated in the budget, but I'll tell you there's been impact because I think there are a lot of people from the arts, what was it, a year ago or something that came, and the council, that capital plan came out of that. Again, not everyone's ideas were incorporated, but some were. So the council gives serious consideration to it. That's all you could ask for, I think. Understand the challenge they have balancing all the needs and demands from everybody. So I want to thank you all for coming. You get to take a cookie on the way out. And please write me if you have any other thoughts about the budget, okay? Thank you all. Good night.